Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at the boarding actions boxes, and we're going to do a little breakdown. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. Alright, so we have the Tyranids, Necrons, and Grey Knights launch their own boarding actions with new boxes. And obviously we have already seen Space Marines and Chaos boxes previewed. The Space Marine box is out, and the Chaos box is still on the horizon. So the Space Marine box came in at $110, and it's currently Games Workshop's cheapest box in the Warhammer 40k range that is readily available. So definitely awesome, and I love that they are reverting back towards that $100 price point. Even if it is specifically for boarding actions, it's still full of models that we can use for Kill Team or 40k. This is something I've been talking about for some time, and honestly, I think it's a great improvement or move back in the right direction. Obviously, as Games Workshop moves away from the Start Collecting boxes and into the Vanguard boxes for Sigmar or the Combat Patrol boxes for 40k, the price point jumped up from essentially around like $100 closer to that $150 mark. And then most of the big boxes Games Workshop puts out are closer to that $200 mark. So there really was a gap around $100, and I'm glad to see them filling it, although I'm not quite sure that that is actually going to be the case. Boarding actions are an exciting new way to play Warhammer 40,000, introduced in Arcs of Omen Abaddon, smaller forces clashing at close quarters with immense void shifts. We're all mad for this game mode for Warhammer community campaigns to stories, scenarios, and battle reports in White Dwarf 485, and things are only going to heat up now that Arcs of Omen Angron has arrived, bringing extra faction rules, new missions, and additional terrain to explore. The Grey Knights, Necrons, and Tyranids have all mustered boarding patrol boxes to join the fun. 3 swift and adaptable forces ready for decisive action in the darkness of space. With the mustering rules available as a free download, you can build your box and get boarding right away. The Necron dynasties care not for the squabbles of lesser races, but they are keen to plunder the Arcs of Omen on the off chance that they recover ancient heirlooms through lost time. So here we can see the 3 boxes. Now we're going to go ahead and break down each of those individual boxes. Alright, so first we have the Necron box. You're going to get in this set 1 squad of the Ophydian Destroyers. These are the tall guys in the back. There's 3 of those, and they come with the little plasma sight assistant. And then we're going to get 10 of the Warriors. We see those here kind of in the middle. You'll also get 3 Scarab Swarms because they're included on there. But as of now, you're not allowed to take Scarabs in boarding actions. So you can just kind of put those off to the side. And then we see a squad of Lychguard and then another squad of Lychguard. So we see 5 right here and 5 right here. Those can actually also be built as the Praetorians, so you do have some more options there. If we go ahead and total all those up, $60 for the Ophidians, 50 for the Warriors, 55 and 55 for the Lychguard, we see we get $220 worth of product here. And to tell you the truth, Games Workshop typically, with their big boxes, sticks to around 30 to 35% in general. Now, occasionally you'll have one that's slightly less, and occasionally you'll have one that's slightly more. But in general, you save about 33%, let's say, on those boxes. So in this case, we have $220 worth of value. You would expect this box to be roughly, with Games Workshop's pricing, somewhere around like $145. Now that is just their general pricing map right there. It does not have to be exactly like that. And sometimes we do see those outliers. But that tells us that likely based on that $220, we're not going to get a $110 price tag on this box set as we did for the Space Marines. And we saw that also with Chaos, which we'll get to in just a minute as well. It seems very unlikely that those 2 boxes would be the same price. So far we have only seen the Space Marine price at $110. And while I don't know for sure, I'm pretty confident to say that these boarding patrol boxes will all be different prices, or at least there'll be 2 or more different price points that they come in at. So there's our Necrons. It is $220 total MSRP. Realistically, though, it's probably going to be priced somewhere around like $145. Abaddon and Vashtor's elaborate plan to conquer the galaxy is nearly impossible for mortal minds to comprehend. 1,000 minor movements building to one grand reveal. The Tyranids, on the other hand, simply see the Arcs of Omen as floating buffets full of tasty biomass. Oh, and you know what? I didn't even mention it about the Necron one, but I have beef with that Necron box set, because there's not even an HQ in it, which is very, very strange. Why build a boarding patrol box where you're literally allowed to take 1 HQ and then either up to 3 troops or elites and not even put the HQ in? I know you don't need to take an HQ, but obviously they're very powerful. Very, very strange decision, in my opinion, not to put an HQ in the Necron box. That just absolutely blows my mind. That being said, let's take a look at the Tyranids. All right, so we see Games Workshop has put 2 squads of warriors in this box set, 1 squad of 8 Gene Stealers, and 1 Broodlord. So the warriors are $60 per set of 3, so 60 plus 60 plus the Gene Stealers are $35. You can tell that Gene Stealer kit is an old one because it's still only priced at $35. And then we see the Broodlord as well for $42. So if we total that all up, 60 plus 60 plus 35 plus 42 comes out to $197. So close to the Necron set, but still 20 something dollars less than it. And then the actual Space Marine set, which we do know the price on, is $163 MSRP inside the box. So this one is kind of in a strange place where it's basically got $30 more than the Space Marine box set, and it has about $20 less than the Necron box set. So sort of like right in the middle. And again, if we kind of break that down and say, okay, roughly $200 in value, and Games Workshop's going to do a roughly 33% discount on that, again, it puts us somewhere around like that $140 price point, roughly. Maybe $135, something like that. It just seems strange that all these boxes will be individually priced, like different levels, but it's definitely a possibility that we're going to see something like that as opposed to just like uniform pricing. And we will notice that this one does have the Broodlord for an HQ, as do all of the others have an HQ except for the Necron box. But Games Workshop has kept up with that strange theme of putting multiples of the same units inside the box, which wouldn't be that bad if the starter box didn't already have warriors in it. So again, I got to kind of like downvote them for choosing to put 6 warriors in this when there's already 3 warriors inside of the combat patrol box. So if somebody is expanding on, they just end up with like 3 of the same unit. Now maybe you want to take 9 warriors, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would rather see more options with stuff. At least with like the Praetorians, you can build a multi-kit with that, so you can have 2 different units from the same box. All right, so let's move on here. Most of the Arcs of Omen are fairly frothing with the malign power of the warp, bursting with mutants, demons, and weird little guys with their eyes sewn shut for the inscrutable pleasure of dark patrons. And if there's one thing the Grey Knights don't like, it's the shenanigans of chaos. Alright, so here we see the new Grey Knights box. So just right off the bat, we see that it's very limited. Obviously, this is an elite force, but we see Castellan Crowe for $45, Terminators for $55, and then the Grey Knight squad, which can be built multiple ways, 10 models for $65. So if we just total those up, 45, 55, and 65, we come out to $165. And we know the Space Marine box was $110 and had $163 in MSRP, so almost exactly the same as this. So it seems very, very likely that this Grey Knights box is going to come in at $110. So $165 for the Grey Knights, $197 for the Tyranids, and $220 for the Necrons, but not including an HQ, strangely enough. So let's jump over and take a look at the Chaos and Space Marine boxes now. Alright, so here we have the Boarding Patrol Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines. These were the first boxes shown, and the Space Marine box is already available for order. So if we just go ahead and break down the Space Marine box, we see 1 of the new Gravis Captains, $38, 10 Intercessors at $60, and 5 Heavy Intercessors at $65. So 38 plus 60 plus 65 comes out to $163, and the official prices on this, $110. So again, roughly around that 30% savings. And once again, my main complaint with this box set is that it comes with 10 Intercessors. The only limitation I've found for Games Workshop not to just completely mix it up and just do 5s of everything in these boxes, since they don't have to individually package the squads, so it doesn't matter if they normally come in 10s or 5s. The only thing I've been able to pick out is the instructions. So if Games Workshop was to put in regular Intercessors and then Assault Intercessors for say, they could give you 5 of each, and the only difference would be giving you those regular Intercessors, they would just have to include 1 extra instructions manual. So super basic. They could even just provide a link for like the instructions online if they didn't want to spend any extra money on it, but give us better box sets. So there are definitely some very simple solutions that Games Workshop could use to give us a little more diversity in these box sets and make them a little more desirable and a little less redundant. And then finally we have the Chaos box, and this one was raising red flags all over the place. just because the price was just so off compared to the Space Marine one. So in this case, you have Abaddon, $65, Legionaries, $65. There is some discrepancy between what's shown and what's listed. It actually only shows 5 Legionaries, but they're only available in 10-man squads. And the way the squad is set up, it's not like 2 of the same sprue inside there, so there's no real way they could separate it. So it says it comes with 10. It pictures only 5, but it does seem like it definitely comes with 10. So 65 for those Legionaries. And then we have Cultists, 2 squads of 10 at 45 and 45. So 65 plus 65 plus 45 plus 45 comes out to 220. And if we compare that to the $163 for the Space Marine box set, seems very, very unlikely this is going to come in at the $110 price point, because that would be a 50% off box and by far the best box Games Workshop has ever offered. So I just don't think it's possible. So that being said, again, if we take that $220 price point, seems much more likely we're going to get this box somewhere around like $140 to $150. I would say roughly $145 seems like the most likely. So if you ask me, it seems more likely than not that we're going to get at least 2 different price points for these box sets. Obviously, we've already seen the $110 price point for the Space Marines, and then likely the Grey Knights as well. And then realistically, there's at least a second price point that's probably going to be somewhere around $145, and that's going to include Chaos and Necrons. And then the Tyranids kind of fall in like this weird spot in the middle where they're basically just under $200. So if they come in at $145 for the box set, it's going to be a slightly less value, like less savings. But also the Tyranid stuff is kind of underpriced relative to everything else, because some of those kits, like the Gene Stealers, for instance, are just so old and were never repriced. And now a quick message from this week's sponsor. This video is sponsored by CMOGames.com, where you can get 15% off most Games Workshop pre-orders, and they go live right at midnight Saturday mornings. CMOGames.com offers free shipping on orders over $25 in the US 48, and most orders ship within 24 hours. CMOGames.com has been selling Games Workshop products online for more than 20 years, and customer service is their top priority. CMOGames.com carries the full line of Games Workshop products, including 40k, Age of Sigmar, Kill Team, Warcry, paints, hobbies, and tools. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description below so they know you heard about CMOGames.com from Warhammer Man Studios. Now, back to the video. The Gene Stealer kit is really old, and it has been priced at $35 for a long time. There was one point in time a couple years ago when I noticed that the Death Company for Blood Angels and also the Sanguinary Guard as well were both still priced at $35, and it seemed extremely undercosted relative to like the rest of the range, because you would buy like 5 of the newer models or something like that for like $55 or even $60. And then at some point in time, they basically just took them out of the web store and then just put the exact same squads back in with new packaging. And they raised the price up to, I think it's $55, which is what they're at now. So they went from $35 to just $55 suddenly. So I think in Games Workshop's head, they see those Gene Stealers priced at $35. And to them, that's really like a $55 kit. So in my opinion, maybe that kind of fills up the gap a little bit. But there is always a possibility there will be a third price point for these boxes, but I think that's much less likely. So for me, my guess is that we're going to see boxes at 110, which we already know for sure. And then we're also going to see some boxes closer to like that 140 or 150 mark. I don't think they're quite as appealing if they're 150, because that's basically just a combat patrol. So maybe the idea is that you can pick up one of the combat patrols, one of the boarding actions, put them together, and you have a nice start for an army. I'm not really sure, but I think most likely we're going to see a second price point for these box sets. Matter of fact, it seems almost inevitable. The real question is, are we going to see 2 or more? So that's the breakdown for the new boarding patrols. We see that most of them have a pretty nice value. While we only have price point for 1 so far, I think it's pretty clear that we're going to get a second price point right around that $145 mark. Overall, I do like the boarding patrols. I think they're pretty nice, and I always prefer to have more options with discounts already built into them to pick up these boxes at. It does seem very strange, though, looking at the Necron box, that they didn't include an HQ here. I think they could have easily like removed something from this box and then just put the HQ in. Obviously, it's already at $220, so it doesn't seem like a good idea to just add something in here, because the box would just get more expensive. But I think by taking out the second squad of Lychguard, you could probably just put in a pretty cool HQ and everything would be all set. So very strange choice that they didn't do that already. Maybe it has something to do with the starter box or something like that, because you already get an HQ in that. and they figure Necrons are in the starter box. But if that was your rationale, it doesn't really make sense because so are the Space Marines. So very interesting nonetheless. I don't think that they overlooked it, but honestly, it's going to be very difficult for you to pick this up and have a great time playing against your friends if it doesn't even include an HQ. So maybe they're just expecting everybody that picks up the Necron box set already has at least one HQ from the starter set or something like that. So that's it for the Boarding Patrol box breakdowns right here. A little speculation on the prices and the overall potential value in these things. I think in general, they're pretty nice. There's definitely some potential. Some of them are obviously a little more desirable than others. It does seem rather strange that most of them are a little on the redundant side with at least 2 of the same unit in them. But like I always say, I'm always glad to see more options as opposed to less options, whether it's brand new models that you don't have to pick up if you don't like them, or new box sets, etc. I always prefer for them to have lots of discounted big box options that you can choose to or not to pick up, as long as they have availability. I would absolutely love to see all of the Boarding Patrol boxes get permanently added to the range. If Boarding Patrol does well or they're popular, maybe that will be the case. Games Workshop hasn't specifically said anything like that. I think they're kind of giving it a try. I do like that they spun it off and made it a little more narrative so that the competitive players don't feel like that they need to get into it. But the truth is, if you already play a little bit of Kill Team or 40k and or both, it's the perfect way to kind of just use all your stuff for multiple different games. So I think it's pretty cool overall. I love the Into the Dark terrain and the board setups and everything, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. So that's it for today for our Boarding Patrol breakdowns. Special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check them out for 15% off Games Workshop products. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man, and it's time for me to play some boarding actions. And I'm out of here.